So, hello everyone and welcome. Thank you for attending today's technical assistance webinar. The webinar is presented by Amity Foundation, acting as the third-party administrator for LA County's Justice, Care, and Opportunities Department and the CFCI CARE grants. The CFCI, or Care First Community Investment Grants, are the result of ballot measure J voted in by LA County residents in 2020. Care First Community Investment Funds are intended to be invested directly into communities and alternatives to incarceration that address negative outcomes caused by racially driven criminal legal system inequalities and long-term economic disinvestment. Today's webinar is being recorded. You do not have to be on camera. Understand that if you are on camera, your image may be captured in the recording, and staying on the webinar represents your consent to being recorded. So I want to introduce today's presenter, our very own data manager, Rudy. Do you want to give a little 2 cents of who you are, what you do, and yeah, I guess that's it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Rudy Cardenas, Director of Data. So I am, I guess, currently the point of contact for anything and everything apricot related. We do have an additional couple team members who are kind of behind the scenes, which we will be transitioning in slowly. Again, so anything related to apricot, anything related to your data, please feel free to reach out to myself directly, or you can always reach out to the help desk. The help desk is where basically the system that we use to sort through and align all of our different requests across all the organizations.
Awesome. So next slide. Okay, so at Amity, we incorporate teachings that center the community before we begin our work. Today, we will use the LA County Land Acknowledgement to recognize the price paid by individuals that has resulted in efforts such as the Care First Community Investments. We recognize that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tonva, Tataviam, Serrano, Quiche, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants. We acknowledge that settler colonization resulted in the genocide of the First Peoples. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. All right, Rudy, so I will hand it off to you, and yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you, Mina. All right, folks. So today our topic of discussion is outcomes. So we're starting off with what are outcomes. I'm going to do my best to give you the most simplified version of outcomes, as I do know that it can be complicated and there are typically a lot of questions as to what is an actual outcome. So outcomes are results or changes from actions. So basically, these can be the results of services that you're providing. The services that you provide, in theory, right, should lead to some kind of outcome for all of your students. They help to showcase success. So when you're envisioning or when you're talking about your program, every student should really have a clear path towards success, right? It should, there should be a clear pathway for them to necessarily run through your program, receive all the services, and at the end of the day, have some kind of measurable impact within their life, some kind of change that was brought on by all the services that they received through your organization. So it's important to focus on outcomes, not just services, because they show whether the effort made through your services is making a meaningful difference, right? So we were talking strictly services. An organization can say that we provided, I don't know, let's say a crazy number, something of 10,000 services to 1,000 students. However, when we're just simply measuring services and only talking about services, we're not able to see if there was an actual impact made through the services. So based on the services that were provided, was there a change in that student's life? What were they, how were they beneficial? How did their lives improve because they came to your organization, they participated in your services and moved on? Why are outcomes important? So one of the things that you are going to hear a lot is that they measure success. That's kind of the key point. Um, as an organization, they also help you stay focused on what's important. So if you are, again, just providing services and they don't lead to an outcome, it starts to question, how do you know that your organization is making the impact that you want it to? How are you, again, making any kind of change, effective change in your students' lives? They show if your goals are achieved. Outcomes are what students and stakeholders care about. So when you are applying for funding, and we will talk about that a little bit later as well, when you're applying for funding, it is something that any funders, your current funders, or even folks that are looking to find out about your organization to possibly provide funding, they want to know what type of outcomes you're providing to your students, right? What kind of success stories do they have? For instance, if you are providing, let's say, education, you work at a high school, uh, they want to know how many kids are graduating from your school, how many kids are coming through your doors and leaving because they're not happy. They want to know what's the path to success. Are your students on that current path? Are they not just are they on that path, but are you making adjustments if they're not to ensure that they're moving forward? Measuring outcomes. So anytime that you are trying to establish outcomes within your organization, you want to ensure that they are clear and that they are easy to measure. One of the ways or easiest way to measure outcomes is through through using data. So you can use surveys, reports, or even tests, right? So when you think of, again, when you think of, let's say, education. So if a student is currently receiving high schools at their local high school, in order to attain their high school diploma, they have to take a series of exams, they have to pass a series of classes. Once they've shown that progress and that completion, they are then given out a high school diploma that, again, basically shows everyone that this particular student met certain requirements. And it's the same thing kind of along any of your programs, right? So if you have let's say a vocational certification class, so we have a student that is taking a vocational certification class, let's say forklift license, for example. So through that class, he has to learn certain information. He has to learn to operate the vehicle in a certain manner. Then he has to pass an exam, which will then give him a certification. Once he has gotten that certification, different doors open for him, right? So because he has a certification now, he is a bit more marketable in certain markets to certain employers. Because he's more marketable, he can now get a job operating a forklift or in that related field, which then can help with an improvement in other social aspects. Right? So because he has a better paying job now, he can afford to move into an apartment. Basically sustainability. So we want to use the knowledge that we gain to make improvements to ensure better outcomes moving forward. So let's say that you set a goal for yourself where you want to have 1,000 students come through your program and attain again a forklift license. After that first year, you realize that 1,000 is a very lofty number for you at that moment. You don't have enough resources, you don't have enough a big enough team. Basically, the data will help you realize, apologies, the data will help you realize what adjustments, what pivots need to be made so that you are hitting a goal that's more attainable. Okay, so next part, we're going to talk about the different outcomes that are in Apricot. In part, sometimes folks might not have an understanding of where particular outcomes would be available, what selections they should be making in order to be able to see the particular outcomes. So we're going to talk about education placement. So for education placement, again, typical service would be employment or job training. The subcategory would be forklift training. The outcome from your student taking this training to its completion, passing all attending all classes, passing all required exams, they would have two outcomes at the end of it. One would be an outcome for an education placement. The vocational school enrollment would count. Oh, apologies. Vocational school enrollment would count as an outcome. And the secondary outcome that they would attain would be once they attain the actual vocational cert. And again, it would be for a forklift license. The next example in Apricot is the employment placement. So again, touching back to that, we are providing forklift training to our student as a service. Once our student has gone through and attained their license, then we can also work on them in updating their resume and start applying for jobs. So through the services that we're providing, now we can also mark employment placement. Sorry, I think I made a mistake by leaving education placement on here twice. So the outcome for this would be the full-time employment. Housing placement. So we do have a lot of folks that provide housing. Every time we've had the conversation as to the housing services, folks have a tendency of forgetting all the work that they put into getting someone housed. So the services would be housing resources, housing application. We do know that a lot of work goes into a housing placement, right? So getting having someone fill in the paperwork, helping them attain all the required documents, license, proof of income, things of all that of that nature. We know that it requires a lot of work. All of those items are services which, again, would lead to an outcome of housing placement. I just threw an example on there of, let's say, emergency shelters. So through providing services, through providing housing services, providing housing resources, also providing or assisting the student with the housing application, we were able to put them into an emergency shelter. If we're thinking back to the student that, let's say, attained that license, the forklift license, them attaining the forklift license could help them go from, let's say, being in an emergency shelter into a market rate housing, in part because now they have a more steady income. They were able to attain a better job than what they had previously because of that license. So using outcomes to attain additional funding. So we do have a couple notes, right? So funders do want to see the results, basically showing your successful students, showing the outcomes that your organization, your students have attained. shows a measurable impact within the community. So if you are providing, again, sorry, this is kind of like my favorite one to always go with is education. So when you talk about a high school that is high performing, they have actual numbers that go with their organization, right? So they have a high API score. They have a high success rate for their students, meaning a high graduation rate. So if let's say a school had 500 students and 499 of them, left that school with a high school diploma, they will have it shows a great success, right? It shows the funders, it shows any type of funding that they're going for. Um, Basically, that their program is not just a success, that it is it makes an impact with the students that they work with. They are able to guide their students efficiently through their program and ensure that they complete it they go from beginning to end. Funders are more likely to invest in organizations that can demonstrate how their funds will lead to positive, meaningful outcomes, ensuring their money is used efficiently. So funders do want to ensure that the money that they are putting into the community, that they are putting into an organization, is being spent well. And so outcomes are a clear indicator that not only are you a successful organization, that your students um, go through your program, that they go through your program, basically you have retention. They stay along the path that you're designating for them. Many grant applications require organizations to outline outcomes which show well-defined measurables. So again, going back to any type of funding that you're applying for, they're going to have a clear and they want to know, like, what's your success rate? What type of programs are you providing? Based on the programs that on the services that you're providing, what type of pathway is your student taking? What deliverables are you providing? In essence, what is there a difference when they leave your program to how they began? And again, right, so when it comes to, let's say housing, right? So we are a housing program and we are taking folks off the streets and we are helping them to, move into permanent supportive housing. So we are, in essence, helping them improve their lives, helping them be able to be more of a, I want to make sure I choose my words wisely. So they have a bigger impact within society, within their community, right? They're able to provide more to the community that they're working with or that they live in, as opposed to just, being on the streets and, you know, things of that nature. I do know that we went through this really fast, folks. I do know that outcomes can be a very complicated measure or idea for folks to understand. The overall basic is that the outcomes should be the successful pathway that your students are on. So the services that you're providing should lead your students down down a track. Beginning to end, it helps to identify what type of successes that we want them to have. We can go ahead and open it up for questions.
Does anyone have any questions? There are none in the chat. No, no questions for Rudy.
I have a feeling they'll come.
Yes, all the slides will be on the website within a week, as well as the presentation. Any questions in regards to this presentation? Cynthia, you have your hand up. What's going on?
Yes, hi everyone. I have a question regarding being able to get a report of this data pertaining to outcomes. Over, I know we have the report that we can run in terms of like what we submitted and enrollments and all of that. If
Mhm.
we wanted to have a more complex report about the data that we're entering, is that possible?
So that would actually have to be done in-house. We can provide you with like all of the data that you've entered. But it would need to be on your end, that you would have, let's say your data team or, an analyst that you have, to help you create that type of reporting.
Okay, so the raw data is possible to request and then we can.
Absolutely. So you do have access to the raw data. It is via the provider monthly report. If you can please send an email to the help desk,
Okay.
excuse me, to the help desk, and we can send you instructions on how to locate the report, how to run the report, and how to export all of your data.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Rudy, someone asked, how can I publish this data? Like, in what ways can they utilize this data like publicly? And can they, or should they publish it raw, or should they like clean it up and make it look pretty for people to understand it?
When they're talking about their data, are they talking about the TPA information?
Overall.
So typically what a lot of agencies will do, let's take TPA data, right? So they will put together, typically you do want to, you'd want to create a couple of different reports, right? It's all about who's viewing your report. So you would want to maybe create a dashboard that shows the different types of services that you're providing, how many students you are providing services to, the outcomes that are being attained by all of your students. And that would probably be like the nicest, cleanest way to show that information. There are also annual reports that a lot of organizations will do. And that is something that they will, typically they'll put it up on their website. They will publish it so that the community, basically anyone that visits their website can view. Now, those will need to be, I guess, a lot prettier, so that it's visually appealing, so that folks will invest the time to look through, read through all your information, and see what your organization's about, the types of services, and types of really the types of services, outcomes achieved by your students. But again, when it comes to it's really about who you are, who the stakeholders, right? Like who you're preparing this data for. If you're talking again to funders, you can go with strictly numbers, right? So a quick dashboard, a quick maybe Excel report that shows, that has different tables that shows um, students served, your overall, number of students that you provided services to, overall number of, maybe demographic breakdown, as well as the different services that you're providing and the outcomes that have been attained by all of your students.
And another question, um, how can they explain outliers and how should they be handled?
So outliers, maybe students that weren't successful.
Yeah, like,
Um, so when it comes to that, I guess the easiest and most direct approach is, no one's perfect, right? You have a lot of folks that will try and take a class or try and take a program or participate in services when they're not ready to do so. Life happens and your priorities change, day in and day out, right? So, maybe when you signed up for a course or, to receive particular services, you were ready to proceed 100%. But, you know, within the time that you signed up and the day that you began receiving services, things have changed and you are no longer able to, give that same focus, give that same attention that you had intended to at first. There are so many different reasons as to why a student doesn't successfully complete a program. And I think most people are aware, which is also why it's important to track retention, right? If a student comes in, leaves, but comes back, let's say later down the line, it's good to be able to identify, that you had that student, partake in the program initially, and for whatever reason, they didn't make it through. But they came back and they chose your organization to come back to. So, your data will always really tell a story about your students and what they're receiving from you, and why they're seeking you out as opposed to any other organization that does the same thing you do.
And one other one, how should unexpected changes or deviations from the predicted outcomes be managed?
So that's where you will really, your leadership will make adjustments, right? So it's kind of hard to give a direct answer without like specifics,
Yeah.
because, and again, an unexpected thing could be that, let's say I don't know what's in, let's say that the location that you were providing the services to is no longer an option. So you have to stop providing services, find a new location, get yourself reset, and then, proceed with providing the services again and kind of getting everyone to trust that you are, going to be able to manage it differently this time, right? There are always kind of factors that are out of our control, out of your control. And again, it's just about making adjustments as necessary. There isn't, again, when it's unexpected, it's not something you can necessarily plan for or, um, take it into account prior to. It's something that your team will just have to learn to go on the fly with, or, have that conversation as to what makes best sense, what adjustments can be made, then and there.
And then um uh, what what's one piece of advice you would give to an organization just beginning to leverage data in their organization's decision making?
So I I will say that having an actual data system is very important. Hiring, and again, this is just for organizations that may not have it. We will have some orgs that already have a data team. They already have like their system in place. They're fully up and running. If you are, trying to become a data-driven organization, one, it's ensuring that you have an actual team. So, maybe applying for funding to hire, like, again, starting off with maybe just an analyst, or, someone that would be knowledgeable in data systems, really in data in general, so that they can help you figure out what data should be collected, what you're currently collecting, what your funders are asking for, ensuring that you're able to report on all of these items, and also helping you track not necessarily any issues that you're having, but maybe helping you track, like, let's say that you're offering a particular program that isn't doing well. They can help you create an assessment to figure out why that program isn't doing well. Is it, in relation to anything within our control? The students don't like the time of day the workshop is provided. They don't like the location. They don't like, you know, the um, the coach or staff member that you have providing, the presentation, workshops, whatever it may be.
And
Mhm.
sorry.
No, no, go
And
ahead.
the final question in regards to this is what predictive and now what tools, if any, outside of like Apricot, do you recommend that would help in like data and like forecasting behaviors, I guess? Um, as they won't have Apricot forever and Excel, I mean, not everyone knows how to use
Mhm.
Excel. So anything you would recommend?
So there are multiple tools that can help you create different visuals. So you can use, if you have a Microsoft license, I believe Power BI is included. You can also use Tableau. These tools are really good at helping you put together visuals of all of your data. They are exceptional in helping you analyze the information. However, you would still need to, hire someone to help create all of those dashboards, so to speak. Um, in regards to a data system, there are so many out there. I know a lot of folks like Salesforce. I know many folks use Apricot, they use ETO. There are there are so many different variations, and it's not necessarily about what I like, it's about what makes the most sense for your organization, right? Because costs will also vary across all the different platforms, which is definitely something you'll want to consider.
Can you say those first two again, Rudy?
Power BI.
Power BI.
Mhm.
And you said Tableau. How do you spell
Tableau.
Tableau?
Tableu.
Mm, that is not how I had spelled it. Amazing. Thank you. And those are all of the questions. So if you have a question in regards to something else that Rudy could definitely answer, please stay on. But thank you so much, Rudy, and everyone for joining us today. We appreciate all of the knowledge you instilled, and we hope that we can see you at the October 17th JCOD event. Again, check your emails and register. We'd love to see you there. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.